Well, welcome everybody. This is Jason Howell, and on behalf of the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, the Association of Substance Abuse Programs, and Recovery People, we welcome you to our January webinar. This is part of our ABCs of Advocacy series, all marching towards Recovery Day at the Capitol, which is coming up on March 6th. So today we're going to be talking about the legislative budget. And before I turn it over to Amy, I would ask for those of you that are not speaking, if you could put your phone on mute. That would cut out any background noise, and hopefully we'll have time for some questions later on, and then you can unmute yourself. So if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and turn it over to Amy.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Amy Granberry. I work for the Centacor Foundation, but I also serve as the legislative chair for the Association of Substance Abuse Programs. Thank you for joining us today. Jason, can we go ahead and pull? Thank you. So what we wanted to talk about, this is the first time in a very long time that we have had an exceptional item added to the base budget, or added as a request by the state of Texas. And so I wanted to give you a picture of what treatment, prevention, and intervention funding looks like currently. So the first column, the FY 18-19 base, that's our current request and the current funding levels. General revenue, as you can tell, is a much smaller portion of it, and then the larger portion is the federal funding through the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Block Grant. And so those numbers, the FY 18-19 base, are all on the far left. In the middle is the request that's being considered currently. And you can see the initial across the general revenue line has a large increase, a $44 million increase. And we are actually still getting some clarification on that, because we have been told by the state that does, actually on this budget, that is the opiate dollars. And so in each of the categories, the treatment, prevention, and intervention, the majority of the increases that you see on this slide are the SOAR money, the opiate response dollars that have come into the state. So total, there is an increase, there appears to be an increase here. This is not an increase beyond those opiate dollars at this point. You can see there's also been a decrease in the federal funding for prevention anticipated for the next biennium of about $393,000. So treatment projected in this budget would be funded at $319 million, and $319 million and change for the next 2 years. Prevention would be at $102 million, and intervention would be at $51 million moving forward. Jason, you want to go to the next one? There is a category included as all other, and what that really is regulatory compliance, contract management, all of the functions that the state provides. So right now that's about $7.8 million. Anticipated for the next biennium would be $8.2 million. Then you see exceptional item number 21. And this is the $45 million. And this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, because this is where our advocates can make the biggest impact. This is the first time in a very long time that the state has included an exceptional item in their initial request. And if an exceptional item is not even listed, then it becomes virtually impossible for us to advocate for a budget increase. So the good news is the state put it in their initial request. The bad news is at this point it hasn't made it into the base budget for the budget bill that's in front of the Senate and the House. So that's where we have the most work to do because it's still out there and it still could be included moving forward. So that exceptional item is listed as exceptional item number 21, and it is for $45 million, particularly, it was written particularly for a rate increase for treatment. However, last week, when Sonia presented to a number of the ASAP members, she did say that she anticipates, questions from the legislature on increasing rates but not increasing capacity. So those dollars could be used in a variety of ways. They could be used to increase rates and increase capacity, or any combination. So if we are successful in moving forward that exceptional item, the budget for prevention, treatment, and intervention would actually go up just shy of $1 million when you're including, well, I guess it's about, yeah, when you're including the opiate dollars as well that have come into the state in the last year, and then this exceptional item. Jason, I know Cynthia's on the phone. Cynthia, would you like to jump in because you've been attending more meetings locally than I have? Cynthia? Okay. She'll catch up with us in a minute. So what I really want to focus on, since we're talking about advocacy, is how we advocate for that exceptional item. The first opportunity will be next week. The Senate Finance Committee will be meeting on the 5th of February to take invited testimony only, and HHSC will be presenting on the 5th. At that point, they'll be doing an overview of their budget and their requests, and then their slides will be made public, and we will be able to share them with you. On February 6th, HHSC will be accepting public testimony. ASAP will be putting in official testimony, and we already have at least one member that has agreed to provide that official ASAP testimony. I would say that if, they like to hear from constituents, but they don't necessarily like to hear the same story 1,000 times. And so we do want to be pretty strategic in how we present to the actual Finance Committee. However, the true opportunity is with each of you working with your representatives and senators that serve on either finance or appropriations and talking about this exceptional item, talking about the need for an increase in rates to sustain the infrastructure that already exists, and how those dollars impact their local communities. And I apologize, I did not bring up a slide with the names of those committees. Jason, is it possible to go to the legislature and show the names of those two committees, or is that something we need to send out later?
Now let's see. Let's see what I can pull off here. So if I go to Texas Legislature, I bet it's right
Yeah,
here.
TLO, right there.
All right. And so we want to go to the House side committees.
Let's start with Senate Finance. House hasn't listed all of their meetings yet.
All right.
Okay, so Chairman is Jane Nelson. Vice Chair is Senator Hinojosa. If you have relationships with either of them, or then you have an opportunity with Senator Betancourt, Birdwell, Campbell. Flores is a new senator out of the San Antonio area. Kelly Hancock, Joan Huffman, Lois Colkhorst, Nichols, Perry, Taylor, Watson, West, and Whitmire is your Senate Finance Committee. They have meetings scheduled, started this week and go through the next 3 weeks for their hearings. All of them have staff that have that handle their health and human service issues, and that would be your policy person that you would want to find and speak to about exceptional item number 21. And then Jason, let's look at, go back to the home and look at the House appropriations.
Amy, this is Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia. The subcommittees aren't up yet, Jason. Let's just look at the general committee. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you covered everything in the budget. Couldn't hop onto mute fast enough, demute. But the only thing I wanted to add is, aside from doing verbal testimony, they welcome and encourage written testimony. You know, they don't want to necessarily spend all day listening to folks, but written testimony is important, and they swear they read them all. So if you aren't able to come, or, you know, would like to provide support, you can send in written testimony. And I will make a commitment, because you have to bring in, like, I don't know, 21 copies or something like that. If people do want to do written testimony, and they would email me or Amy, we will make your copies for you and present that. But the written testimony does count, and it doesn't take up their time necessarily in those long, arduous hearings.
So, Cynthia, I hate putting you on the spot, but if I were to write a written testimony, what key points should I make about this exceptional item?
The most important one is that you're writing, you know, to support, including exceptional item 21. And I think just basically and Amy is chiming as well, but one is saying that the infrastructure is fragile. And if you represent an organization, the way you can really help is kind of describe how the low rates affect your organization. We know in general talking points, you know, that there are like 17 organizations over the last 7 years that have gone out of business, citing rates. The fact that we're only serving 5.8% of those who need the indigent safety net treatment. And we need to expand, but we will get no takers to expand if we don't have the rates. But primarily, if you're sending in an individual kind of testimony or one on behalf of your agency, is to kind of highlight the hardships that it creates for you, because we don't have an overall rate study that can kind of do it in kind of a collective way. So being able to describe how it impacts your organization, and Amy, you can chime in here because you've done an excellent job describing how it affected Charlie's Place, and I'm sure Cinecor as well. That would be very, very helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Cynthia. I think the other piece of that, when you mentioned the rate study, one of the recommendations of the select committee was also a rate study. And so mentioning that need for that rate study and a comprehensive rate study to set more appropriate rates moving forward would be very helpful in that testimony. What other questions? Jason, you want to open it up now before we talk about anything else for questions?
Absolutely. So for those of you that put yourself on mute, and if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask our two experts, Amy and Cynthia, more about the budget or really anything going into this legislative session. And I believe you said the rate or the hearings are February 5th is the invited testimony, and 6th was for the public testimony?
Correct. For Senate Finance, those dates are February 5th and 6th. We do not have House appropriations yet, and I can talk about committees more in a minute, but they were just put together last week, and so we anticipate seeing more dates for House appropriations coming soon.
And Amy, have we gotten the subcommittee for HHS yet in appropriations?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
So while people think of their questions, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about committees. For the Senate, we really didn't see any significant changes on most of the major committees except for Health and Human Services. And Senator Schwartner is no longer leading Health and Human Services. That is now Senator Colkhorst. What I do know is that there is one person, Luisa who has been with Health and Human Services, that was asked to stay in that office, and every other staff member for that committee office is new. So there's a lot of education opportunity for the staff members of the Health and Human Service Committee. It's a very large committee office. They handle a great deal of the state's business, and they look for experts to talk to them about how those health and human service agencies and services are provided across the state. So that's an office that you can definitely spend some time doing some very important advocacy work in, is the actual committee office for Health and Human Services. Senator Colkhorst has been on the committee. She has actually, I've worked with her some in the past and has expressed interest in improving behavioral health services across the state. And so I anticipate seeing her be pretty active as the chair of this committee. On the House side, it was a completely different story, and our new Speaker of the House appointed a wide variety of new committee chairs. With appropriations, it did remain with Zerwas as the chair, but Representative Longoria moved to the vice chair. And then we saw a number of new members joining House Appropriations. As Cynthia asked, and Jason, if you can go back one, you can see there are subcommittees on the House side. So ours will fall under Subcommittee on Article 2. Those chairs, the subcommittee chairs, have not been appointed yet, and the subcommittee assignments have not been made. But this is an important place to come back to as we move through the budget process, because that's the committee where you want to target your advocacy for the Health and Human Service budget. They're responsible for writing that portion of the budget. Thank you, Jason. Another big change was the majority of our legislation the last two sessions has gone to the Public Health Committee. Previously, that was chaired by For Price. He has moved up to a much bigger role as the chair of calendars, but Representative, calendars, go ahead. So Chairman Price and Vice Chair is Representative Moody out of El Paso. If you are not familiar with calendars, this committee is responsible for what goes to the floor for a vote or what doesn't go to the floor for a vote. And we have worked very closely with Chairman Price the last two sessions on the interim committees, and find his office very supportive of substance abuse needs. So we'll continue working on that relationship. Go ahead. Let's go to public health. This committee saw some very significant changes. Representative Price did stay on the committee, but however, Representative Symphonia Thompson has taken over as chair of that committee. Quite a few of the members are the same, but there are some new ones. I met Representative Ortega last week, and she is new. And I will tell you, about an hour after the committees were announced, she had already requested the committee report from the last session. So I think she's looking for education. If anyone's in her district, that's a great opportunity to meet her and talk to her about what goes on in public health and the health and human service arena. Several of the others. Go ahead.
I clicked on her name to see what district she was in, but that doesn't look like that's been updated. Do you happen to know what district she represents?
Let's go to home and pull her up on the member side that way and see if it shows up.
Let's see, Ortega.
I don't know. She's new. Okay. So, her district office is in Austin. Okay, go click on the visit homepage on Texas Rep website.
Here we go.
There we go. El Paso.
So nice.
Yeah, so she is El Paso, a portion of El Paso. So anybody who has services in that area, definitely she's new to the committee, but was looking for information very quickly. So we would love to develop a relationship with her. Okay, the other place that often bills are referred to is the Human Service Committee, Human Services. That committee had a chairmanship change after a number of years. Richard Raymond has been the chair of that committee for a very long time. Representative Frank has taken over that committee. I understand he has a strong connection to the CPS system and a lot of interest in the CPS system. And that's a lot of what goes into the human services side. For a number of years, most of our bills have moved over to public health, but that's one to keep up with. And then probably the last one that we do keep an eye on is the Insurance Committee. And that, Eddie Lucio, he's a new chair to that committee. And just on a personal note, for those of us living in deep South Texas and windstorm issues, we've lost a lot of our South Texas representation on a personal side on that. So that will be an interesting, because this committee handles insurance from all aspects. So for our purposes, we look to this committee for information on parity and insurance regulations and TDI criteria, that kind of thing. But personally, on the personal side for most of us, we also look at this for windstorm insurance and regulation on our homeowners and things like that. So that's the other committee that we watch on a regular basis.
Amy,
go ahead.
This is Cynthia again. Another area that ASAP is going to be following this year because of the interest in school safety will be the Education Committee. And there are going to be several bills introduced that will introduce substance use disorder services into like school health clinics. There are some school climate and social emotional learning bills. So also, if you're interested in that area of the service continuum, there'll be some advocacy opportunities there too.
So, and that would be on the public education.
Public education, because there's higher education and then public education. Let me scroll down to that.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. So public education, I believe received a new chair. I know higher ed did change chairmanships as well. But yes, a lot of the school safety issues will come through the public education committee, and there are potentially some avenues for our prevention members and those that are interested in that area to work through the public education committee on some of those issues. Okay, Jason, I saw one question pop up in the little notes over here while I was talking. And it looks like there's, I don't know, on the sidebar, it looks like there's two things over there.
Let's see here. So Vicki Adams from Cicada says, Senate Finance members, let me scroll up to see if there's context. April L. Manuel, what is the update on Bill 1486? Is there an organization appointed to represent the certified peer supports in the state of Texas? And I believe so. She's referring to HB 1486, which was from the previous legislative session, and
right.
And I believe that TC BAP has been chosen as the certifying body, and then from there, TC BAP would choose who the training organizations would be.
Correct. On the other piece of that, 1486 that's the one that added it to the Medicaid peer support to the Medicaid benefit. Correct.
Correct.
Yes. So the Medicaid benefit went live on January 1, and so it is an eligible reimbursable service through Medicaid for those agencies that already have Medicaid numbers at this point. In addition to that, I do know the state of Texas has added an office of, there's a director level handling peer support services for the state, similar to the director level that handles treatment and prevention. And I believe the last time I saw an org chart, that role has been filled. Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
I don't know at this time if it's been filled and who it's been filled by, but I can certainly report back.
Yes, it has been. It has been filled. Noah Abdenor is filling that role, and I believe his first day at work is February 4th or 5th.
Okay, next week.
Yep.
This is Frank Davis. Can I chime in right quick?
Sure.
I'm the chairman of the Texas Certification Board of Addiction Professionals. And just to be in all honesty, actually the state selected 2 different certifying entities. We're the largest by far and the most experienced, but basically what our role will be doing is certifying peer specialists for mental health and substance use disorders. We will also be certifying instructors as well as education providers. Stuff being put up on the web, TCBAP, as we speak. The forms should be all ready by Monday for people that want to look in there. We have extended the grandfather period because it was actually supposed to start at January the 1st, but it actually was moved because we just found out a few days ago that we were approved. They were waiting for the final legal stuff over there at HHSC. So the forms are being posted. There's going to be a grandfathering period. The rates and everything we feel like are very, very reasonable from our organization. I can't speak for anybody else, but if you wanted more information, it's all being posted. We're putting a question and answer thing on our website. So if you got any questions, feel free to contact me. Jason certainly knows how to get a hold of me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions I can about it. It's I think one of the biggest concerns and what we're hearing back from people is the reimbursement rates. That might be something we want to try to get on the agenda because they're really not sustainable.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. There's some other questions coming in. There's one question that was asking who the representatives from the El Paso area are.
I know Moody, and now we know Ortega. I can't remember if El Paso, I'm sure they have a third one based on population.
I have
I'd say Joe Moody and Ortega. We would have to get back to you on it. I'm sure they have a third one based on the population of El Paso, but we would have to get back to you on a third one.
And if you live in El Paso and wonder who your representatives and senators are, you can go to Who Represents Me or go to capital.texas.gov homepage, and in the bottom right-hand corner, you can enter your email address, and it'll bring up your particular representatives and senators. So there's some other. Yes.
Let's go back. Let's go do that real quick, and we'll just pull up El Paso.
Okay. So, but before I forget, there's a bunch of these questions coming in. I want to try to get to them. How is we spelling Noah's last name? It's spelled Abdnour. And then it looks like people were asking for Frank's email address, and he's been providing that in the chat box. Frank, hope you don't mind me saying this on the internet. So it's dfdavis2704@att.net. If you have more questions about the Texas Certification Board and its interaction with 1486. So,
No, absolutely. That's fine, Jason. Actually, and just so you'll know, we have officially changed the name from Texas Certification Board of Addiction Professionals to Texas Certification Board. They wanted to make it simple to include all the certifications, so we did that.
nice. Late breaking news. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amy, I'm navigating back over. And
Let's go who represents me and just put in El Paso.
I've if you've got it, if we've got for the House representatives, it's I hope this is updated.
Yeah, we're pulling it up, Cynthia. We're looking at it right now.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, Mary Gonzalez.
Blanco.
Oh, they have quite a few.
Yeah, Blanco. Ortega.
Mm-hmm.
Moody,
and looks like they have a special election open right now.
Right. And the senator is Rodriguez.
Great.
Very cool.
There we go. Well, Jason, unless anybody else has questions, that's really what I have right now as far as committees and the budget. It's early in the session. It's we only have 140 days, but we spend the first 30 getting ready to actually do things. And so in the next 2 weeks, we'll see a lot more action, many more bills filed, committees start to hear things. All of those things will start happening very quickly, but we're kind of still about a week away from that pace where we get things constantly all day and into the night from the legislature.
And I would just also add that if you haven't, introduced yourself, to your representatives, even by phone, now is the time to do it because they're not as busy as they will be in the coming weeks. And so they may have some time to step out of their office and talk to you right now.
So, any other questions? I'm looking in the chat box to see if there's any others, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask us some questions.
I'll add this, Jason. If you want to share it on the next webinar y'all have, feel free to share our address and contact information. I don't mind.
Okay. Yep, and we also will put out a couple more newsletters, and I can definitely include it in there as well, Frank.
That's fine.
Jason, was there anything from the recovery? I know I spoke mostly about prevention and treatment. Was there anything from the recovery side that you're watching already that you need us to be aware of?
Well, I think when you were talking about the numbers, and let me go back to the webs, see if we can get this blown up a little bit bigger. So it seems to break down things into treatment and prevention and intervention. And given that you said that these numbers, those increases are including the opiate dollars, the STR and the SOR, my sense is that anything that any recovery support services the state was going to pay through, those dollars are probably within what they're calling treatment. Do you think that's a fair assumption?
That's correct.
Yes.
So and as far as recovery bills, there seems to be a lot over at Legislative Council, and so for those of you listening, when a senator or a representative has an idea for a bill, they draft some language up and then send it over to Legislative Council, and those magical elves turn it into that legislative language. It seems to be a very unique language before it gets filed, and so I know that there's quite a few bills that have been sent, or proposals been sent to Legislative Council, and there may be seems to be a big pipeline. But we know that there are at least 2 voluntary certification, recovery housing certification proposals over at Ledge Council. One being put forth by Representative Minjares out of San Antonio, and the other by Representative Moody out of El Paso. Representative Moody was also interested in sponsoring a bill that would ask for a interim report on recovery housing that would look at kind of like, what's the supply, what's the demand, and that could potentially set us up for an ask in future sessions. And then the other was a rural recovery community organization proposal that Representative White is putting forth. Representative White is from that, it's kind of between, say, Beaumont and Nacogdoches, that kind of Golden Triangle area. And really, so many of our resources, whether it be prevention, treatment, or recovery support, is in the large urban areas. And so there's been interest in how do we develop out support services in these very rural areas that wouldn't be able to support, I say, a treatment center or detox on their own, but they potentially could support a recovery community organization. And so we're hoping to see all those bills come out before March. Is it 8th? Is that the deadline?
Yes, that's bill filing deadline. It's March 8th. Great, thank you, Jason. And I'm just seeing Rick Green has posted some questions about TDI and parity. I don't think Sherry is on the call today. Sherry Layton is available. Sherry is serving on the parity committee, which has oversight to that and addressed the plan for parity and the parity enforcement and the ombudsman. So she would have the most direct knowledge of what's going on in that. And like I said, I don't think she was able to join us today for that. So we will add that question and pose that question to Sherry and get some information out to you regarding those issues.
Amy, I also see that Rick asked about any bills addressing private insurance at all. I don't know if that's related to his previous question about parity or any insight around that question.
I haven't seen anything. Go ahead, Cynthia.
I was just going to say the same thing. We monitor that, but not the general world of private insurance, but the world of insurance as it relates to behavioral health and parity. And nothing has popped up so far.
Thank you. Well, that's really all I have, Jason, unless anybody has anything else, and except to please encourage everyone to go on and register as soon as you can to join us on March the 6th. We really would love to have, we had over 160 people last time. We would love to have 200 people or more this time. We did clarify to everyone that even though it says recovery, we mean the full spectrum of prevention, intervention, treatment, recovery housing, recovery support services. Anybody that has anything to do supporting people is who we want to join us that day. It's going to be an exciting agenda, and in the future we will talk about more of the details of the actual day. But please go to that website and register to join us.
Bring a carpool.
Yeah, Jason, are you still on?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, the email confirmation on registration that you sent had the link for this webinar in it, and it didn't work. I didn't know what the deal was on it. I just want to let you know.
I will. Thank you for
I registered and I used that link to try to get on here, but I finally went to the Houston TAP chapter link and it went through.
Well,
so I don't know.
I'm glad you're resourceful, Frank. I apologize for any mistake, and I will fix that right after this call.
Yeah. All right.
Jason, Rick's also asking if we're going to leave the PowerPoint up somewhere. I'm happy for you to. I mean, it was pretty brief. It's just the 2 slides on the budget, but if you'd like to send that out to the group or make that accessible in some way, that's fine.
Will do. And Rick, what I've been doing thus far is, so when I send out an invitation for the next webinar, which is going to be February 27th, I include the previous recordings, and we can get this recording or a PowerPoint to you at that time, unless you want it earlier, and I can get that to you as well. And then for those of you interested in registering for Recovery Day at the Capitol, the website is going to be recoverypeople.org/Recovery Day at the Capitol 2019, which hopefully you can see on your screen. So it's just like great things. I missed the last webinar and I couldn't find it. So I'll circle back, Rick, and make sure that I get you a copy of those archived webinars.
Great.
All right, everybody.
Okay,
Well, if
thank
there's
you.
no other questions, Cynthia, Amy, thank you so much for your wisdom. And everybody, it's the time for advocacy is now. We've got our first opportunities coming up here in February, and then we anticipate loads of bills being filed before we come together at Recovery Day at the Capitol, and then we can respectively go visit our representatives and senators at that time. So thanks for tuning in, and be looking for our next email.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Mm.